Now it is my honor to introduce Theresa Mayer as the moderator of our first keynote session. Theresa Mayer is Carnegie Mellon University's Vice President for Research, providing leadership for the university's research enterprise and advocating for the role that science, technology, and innovation play nationally and globally. She is internationally recognized for her research in applications of nanotechnology to electronic and photonic devices and new and previously unexplored functions. She has more than 350 technical publications, invited presentations, and tutorials, and holds 8 patents. Several of her co-inventions have been transitioned into commercial products. Please join me in welcoming Theresa Mayer to the podium.
Well, thank you so much, Hoda, for that warm welcome. And what a great day. Welcome, everybody, to this event at Carnegie Mellon. It's a real pleasure and honor to be hosting this first Fireside Chat and to welcome a true visionary to Carnegie Mellon University. DJ Patil stands as a pioneering entrepreneur, investor, scientist, and leader in public policy, and his groundbreaking contributions span industry, academia, and government. He served as the chief data scientist at the United States Office of Science and Technology Policy from 2015 to 2017. His remarkable career also includes roles as the vice president of product at Relate IQ, which was later acquired by Salesforce, the chief product officer at Color Labs, and head of data products and chief scientist at LinkedIn. Today, as general partner at GreatPoint Ventures, he continues to drive progress in healthcare, enterprise technology, and national security. Please join me in welcoming DJ as he joins me at the stage for this Fireside Chat.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
This is...
These are pretty low. Well, again, thank you, DJ, for joining us today for this important discussion. And before we get started, I'd like to set the stage for our conversation and just reach back. You know, as President Jahanian highlighted, CMU, I think it's well known, we're a leader in AI research and development, and we're deeply engaged in shaping both national and global conversations on AI. In fact, last year, our faculty and leadership did more than 25 congressional hearings, testimonies. Oh no, the technology is falling.
You have Apple Care, right?
I have Apple Care. The university has Apple Care. One thing that I just really love about Carnegie Mellon is our deep engagement and our real commitment to advocacy and sharing this depth of knowledge. So we take that responsibility very seriously. I've been the VPR for just over 2 years. I can't believe, time has really flown. And in that role, I've had the front row seat to the groundbreaking research in AI. And I want to highlight, I think one of our feature panelists here this afternoon is going to be talking about a piece of national AI legislation in AI for science. And I think we recognize that AI is transforming the art of the possible and really should, as we integrate with experimental capability, accelerate the pace of innovation and scientific discovery all the way to translation as we move forward. And CMU is leading that charge. We made over a $40 million investment to establish a state-of-the-art, large-scale robotic-controlled, AI-enabled, autonomous experimental facility just right down the road. So it's a really exciting time for us, and we're really looking forward to contributing in this important way for the country. At the same time, we are very aware, we're keenly aware of the need to balance that accessibility with safety, and that as we think about the acceleration, not only in scientific discovery, but in all fields, that we need to do that. That can't come at the cost of transparency and accountability, again, safety and security. So as Hoda pointed out earlier, governance is all about making sure that we maximize the benefits of AI while we mitigate these costs. So we're working closely with our partners across industry, government, and beyond to make sure that our AI approach to governance is both practical and effective. DJ, you've truly, with your background in industry, in the government, and now with venture, you've been at the forefront of shaping the AI discoveries. And again, not only within companies, but at the federal level. So I can't think of a better person to join us this morning to kick off this event. And you will bring both a deep and I think importantly in this time, a nuanced perspective to this conversation. So with that.
No pressure.
How about if we kick it off by starting with some of your insights at the federal level? Because of course, with the transition to the new administration, this is really top of mind for all of us.
This is the third time I've done a transition with the Trump team.
Okay.
Some have gone better than others.
Well, hopefully, we're excited to hear your perspective. So going back to your role in 2015, I think, particularly for the students in the audience, they would be really excited to hear about your role as the first chief data scientist for the United States. So can you tell me about why the role was created and why you agreed to do it?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you. The first part, I just want to say thank you to CMU for having these sessions. I'm also thankful. Thank you for doing this as a fireside chat, because I think right now more than ever, these need to be discussions. We need to have convenings. We need to have these environments where we're having these dialogues. They're not this time. These problems don't work well as lectures. They don't work well as topics. This is this is a we effort. So thank you for doing that. And I should also thank the funders for allowing this to happen. It seems easy to have these. It's really incredibly important for this to happen. And this kind of gets to the point of the U.S. Chief Data Scientist. And so one thing that people don't always realize is I was an academic at University of Maryland, College Park for many years. And then I went into public service after 9/11 as not anything fancy, a very low ranking, I wasn't even at the Pentagon. That's how, I was out at Fort Belvoir. And that's what got me my first entry into public service. And since then, I've been able to serve 4 administrations, 2 Republican, 2 Democratic. And so it's not like I just kind of came in one time period. And so something that's always been throughout my arc has been finding ways to actually steer technology, help shape it. And there's lots of ways that you can do it. And so that's the one thing I want to emphasize. You don't have to just do it from the top. You can do it from wherever you are, whatever seat you're in. And that is one of the most important things, and especially for students. Like I started off, that's how I got engaged. That's how I started doing these things. The reason the role of the U.S. Chief Data Scientist came about fundamentally was this recognition that we had started to enter this new era of big data, where you're saying, hey, we can put data online, we can take advantage of it, new things could come about. Well, who was steering that? And the first 2 U.S. Chief Technology Officers, that were roles that were created also by President Obama, those roles were really geared and oriented to data. How do we open up data? This idea that even simply at that time period, your data couldn't move from one doctor to another very easily. And the hospital systems would largely believe that data was theirs, not yours as a human. And you couldn't even see the data that the hospitals were looking at, whether alone there was errors or anything in there. So who is going to help shape that? And as the CTO office evolved, it needed to take on new things. And they realized, wait, there's actually a different role here. And that led to the emergence of the US Chief Data Scientist. That the mission statement of that is to responsibly unleash the power of data to benefit all Americans. And the two parts of that that are very carefully chosen with intention is the word responsibly and to benefit all Americans. And that was put into the charter as a mission as not just a one-time role, but a forever role. And that is a role that they tried to fill it during the first Trump administration. They couldn't really find the right person for it, but it has been one that they're actively engaged with now as well. And so it is a key type of role that is a forever type of opportunity and responsibility to advise the president and the cabinet on how to actually drive us forward on these issues.
Wonderful. Reflecting on your comments, and again, just fast forward 10 or so years, and I think arguably we're still challenged by really, now in the day of AI, to have that AI-ready data that is truly accessible. Healthcare is a particular example of that. Some of the innovations here at Carnegie Mellon in the area of federated AI or distributed AI, where we can harness data from multiple sources. But what you did really set the framework for what is so important today with foundation models now being able to bring in multimodal data from so many different sources and the power that will provide. So.
Well, this something you raise that's really important here. As I think we think about ethics, we often, it's really important to balance even the basics of data. We still don't have the basics of data nailed. So most of the time, the great repositories of data, these are unfunded mandates. There's no one there that says, hey, my job is to unlock this data, to open it up. There's no one whose job is there to keep it clean. We think this is, and when the government opens up the data, who do you complain to if there's a data error or there's an issue? There's nobody on the other side of that. Now, there should be, these are written in the legislation signed by President Trump to say that data by default should be open and machine readable. There should be data officers, all of this stuff. But it hasn't happened fundamentally because there hasn't been a drive to it. So many times, if you want to steer governance of AI, all of these things, you also have to fundamentally ask, let's go back to Maslow's hierarchy of food, water, clothing, water, shelter, and ask ourselves about the data. And where's that data? Who has access to it? And how does it actually get curated? There's a tremendous amount that I found over and over again of problems that are within our time horizon of solving, but that we can't do it. Now, I'll give you very specific. Take something like Lyme disease. Lyme disease crushes an unbelievable amount of people every year. There's very little NIH dollars to it. But if you look at the large-scale databases that are out there that are fragmented across healthcare, we could actually come up with really interesting assessments, thoughts, thinking about this. But we just have to have the wherewithal to bring that together and then the technology infrastructure to actually look at those things.
Wonderful. I wonder, from your perspective, what would you prioritize if you were in the role today?
Mm-hmm. So a few things that I would prioritize today. So let me give you that. Maybe the way to say it is, how did we actually prioritize our work? When you're in this office, you think you have an army of people. We had a very large office when I was doing it. The chief data scientist office was a whole 6 people. Which is large by White House standards. The White House is not a very big place. Right. And so how do you get your work done? You actually are leveraging the incredible work of the civil servants in government. And there's a lot of talk right now about civil servants, but leveraging them who have deep expertise across the wide array of things is the way to get things done. And they have unbelievable deep insights on things. And so what we did is we came up with 3 criteria for how we would evaluate our problems. Number 1, it has to impact $1 trillion of US spend or greater. 2, impact 50% of the US population. 3, help a population that has no ability to do anything on their own. They're disadvantaged, they have no access, unrepresented. And so when we look at those, what are those key things? They are things like healthcare. They are things like community policing. There are things like education, national security. The list actually is too big for that thing. Oh, so one thing I said, sorry, 2 and 3 were slightly. The other one is it has to align with presidential priorities. Because if it doesn't align with presidential priorities, you can't get anything done in the building. So what you when you look at these, then the question is, how do you get things going? And this is something that I think we should take advantage of in AI governance, is the way I'm trained as a mathematician, so I think of everything in that form, and so physics is also very close to my heart. So everything to me is like, how do you get momentum? Well, you need a vector, a velocity, and you need mass. So mass is dollars or people. Velocity is the direction in which you're going, and it's a scalar also. So what you look for is, where do you have mass? Do you have a vector? And so what we get to do collectively in these rooms is you get to convene to bring people together to create mass, funders to add to that, and then we get to shape that direction of the vector. And when that is happening, what you look across the country at is every place is an experiment. There's an experiment everywhere, local scale, different ideas, different projects. And you kind of say, well, let's look at that one. Let's take that. Could we actually combine those? Is there a way, something we called Scout, and Megan Smith actually really called Scout and Scale. Mm-hmm. And so we would take these things, put them together and say, okay, now this is a cohesive framework on which we can build. And that's how we'd get things done. And so there are tremendous amounts of innovation, exciting areas. And our question is, how do we fuel that? How do we bring that to others where that we can figure out, like, this is going to be a collective solution that's going to work across all of government?
Yeah, just listening to the priorities, and you talk about the convening power, and I think we saw in the Biden administration, certainly through the CHIPS and Science Act, and the real focus on regional innovation, particularly with a focus on developing technology communities away from the coasts. I wonder if you could say a few words about the increasing role of industry and the convening power that the government has in these areas to bring industry, to bring philanthropy, to bring venture all together to really lower the overall cost to the government.
Mm-hmm. So the government, really at the end of the day, the government can help set priorities through budgetary proposals, convening, or sort of highlighting other groups. And so those are really your kind of primary mechanisms. There's many others. But when we think about what is the role of government, and this is one of the key things is the chief data scientist, anybody at the White House, is how do we bring the right people together to shape things? How do we give it energy? The White House can't just directly say, give it money. That doesn't work. But what we can do, and this is something I think that we have an opportunity to do, we don't need government to do this. Government helps. It helps amplify. But there's no reason that you do need government for that. And I will just highlight, during COVID, the most effective groups around data that was things like the COVID tracking project, COVID Act Now, all these other various groups, everyone who suddenly was an epidemiologist building a model. Look, those data systems, all the infrastructure that came together was really done by all volunteer networks. Now, does that mean that we should just say, get rid of the CDC? Absolutely not. This is a question of how do we also, it's an and function. And so what we should be asking ourselves now is, okay, well, the government can do so much. What happens if this isn't a priority? For whatever reason. That's not a critique of the administration. It's just a statement of what do we want to do if we are in charge? This is a democracy. We get to shape this. What do we want to have to come together? What do we want to bring together on these things? And many, many times historically, change is not driven by government. Change is driven by communities and groups that get together, and then government finally gets on board because they realize there's enough mass and momentum there to take place.
Well, let's fast forward to today, and the new administration is certainly on everybody's mind. And there's no doubt that the new administration has made AI a top priority. And if you look at many of the senior leaders who are now entering the administration, they are well-versed and have great depth and technical knowledge and policy related to AI. So maybe you could spend a moment reflecting on the direction that the new administration is taking in AI governance compared to previous administrations.
Yeah. Well, the good news is during our time in the Obama administration, this is right at the moment when we saw this phenomenal results around AI and the game Go. And that was this aha moment. And it's interesting to note that a bunch of the people that are also involved now in AI, they were the ones who were highlighting like society is going to end. There's a very much a doomer mindset. And so when that happened, President Obama tasked us with saying, well, what's the national strategy around this? And that kicked off a bunch of work. Alex McGilvery, Ed Felton, others, we all came together to kind of say, what is that strategy? And that's where we wrote down the first U.S. national strategy around this. And the goal was to say, how do we start shaping this? How do we start thinking about this? This is the same time we were starting to see really these efforts of misinformation by the Russian government, other organizations. And so we said that this was really going to become a big thing. Carrying forward, we've only seen AI become more and more important on these things. And so the key thing as we head into this next chapter of AI governance with the new administration, there's a number of things I think that I would highlight to them. The first is the importance of humility. The amount that you can learn from others. Like we all come with our backgrounds, we all have our own agendas, but what I found was most important, I came to the problem around health. We were building something called Precision Medicine Initiative, All of Us campaign, building the largest genomic data set ever with electronic medical records, bringing all that together to try to push us into a tailored medical era. And what I learned in that, I had a strong theory of how privacy should work. And what I was very fortunate to do was I met lots of families who had kids of rare diseases, people who were in late-stage cancer, people who had violations of their healthcare data, people who had written and at the formation of HIPAA. And the amount that I learned just by listening helped me understand that these problems are really non-trivial, and that how do you find a balanced approach is incredibly difficult. We think that no data should be posted on Facebook. And I meet these families, and they said, well, where else am I supposed to post it to get help? And then people said, oh, look, here's this, idea, technical idea. And the people would say, I don't have time for that. I'm on a fixed clock to live. And so what's your answer to those people? That's incredibly challenging. But we also know that if we don't do something, there's going to be further violations, there's other harms, there's other activities that need to take place. This is something also that Vivek Murthy and I spent a lot of time on during this Biden administration, really talking about, well, how do we think about social media, and how do we think about the mental health issues facing this? And what is that going to start looking like in an AI era? What are those harms going to look like? What are the benefits going to look like? All of those things that are there. And then the other portion that I think that's really critical for this team to really think about is what do we want this to look like in 10 years? And if we're 3 years out from now on that 10-year journey, and we were to ask, what did we start today? That's one of the biggest things that's there. What do we wish we started today so that in 3 years we'd go, yeah, we set ourselves on the right trajectory for these things? What are those things on governance? What are the things on thinking? What are the things on data sets? And that doesn't have to be relegated to the White House. We should all be asking that question here. What do we wish we started today, knowing that in 3 years we look back, we go, wow, we're in a better place because of that.
Yeah, so picking up on that, let's talk about regulation. So I think the vice president has come out publicly and saying let's back off on regulation. And I wonder if you could reflect, again, given your work in the public sector, in industry, and now in venture, how do you see that impacting the tech sector and the tech sector's approach to governing AI going forward?
So here's a fundamental challenge that I have found. So if you think about things that work on certain time scales, policy typically evolves on a decadal cycle. So we sort of think in 5-year to 10-year increments of how policy evolves. And then once we touch something policy-wise, we really don't come back to it. So if you think about, if you go back and look at HIPAA, it's like, I don't even remember, 30 years now-ish, 25 years on HIPAA. Genetic Information on Discrimination Act has not been updated. Actually, GINA, the Genetic Information on Discrimination Act, it doesn't really make any sense if you read it nowadays, because it's just written in an era where the science was the science at that time. That was our understanding. And so we haven't gone back and touched it. And so we know we should do this. Common rule. It took President Obama 8 years. The common rule reform started a few weeks after the Obama administration started, and it ended just a few weeks before, and it still is not adequate for where we need to go on science, fundamentally. And so we didn't even make progress there. So we're working on that scale. Companies, on the other hand, typically, on average, release one major product a year. If you're really, really good, you're releasing 3 products a year, like the 3 iterations. Like you don't update your major OS like every 3 months kind of thing. It's like once a year, they're like, here's our big conference, here's our big announcement, here's what it is, 1 year. AI is typically evolving somewhere between 5 times to 10 times a year right now. So we're at a 5x to 10x on a yearly iteration. We're at a 1x on large companies, and we're at a 1/10x on policy. So that means, and 2 things that we're really bad as humans. We're really, really bad, as we saw during COVID. We're really bad at understanding exponentials, and we're really bad at transitions. As society, as companies, we're just really not good. So exponentials, transitions. So what's about to happen right now is we're on an exponential delta of technology, and that means big companies are ripe for disruption because they're working at 1x. New startups in AI particularly are working at 7x to 10x, and policies at 0.1x. Like that's a recipe for a mess. Mm-hmm. And so what we have to start getting our heads around is how are we going to solve that dilemma? And we've never had this incompatibility, this deltas in scaling laws take place. And so what is the solution for that? I think everyone's looking for a fast solution. And being in California, many people here are probably familiar with SB 1047. And if you look at SB 1047, the way it was written, trying to work at the application layer, most of that is irrelevant already, given how much technology's changed. A lot of the Biden Harris EO largely irrelevant from just a governance perspective, just because of the way the technology changed. So what do we do there? So some of the things that I would argue is the way we approach this are what are common sense things? What are things that we're like, duh, we shouldn't have that? And so that's what I would call a bunch of the application layer laws. That is the things like, well, you shouldn't be able to use your likeness without your permission. You shouldn't be able to use this to harm people across the genres, from misinformation to revenge porn to other type things. All of these things, child abuse, other types of things that we've seen. The big question here, fundamentally, at the end of the day, we can have all of this legislation. Where's enforcement? Where's enforcement right now happening on this? And this is one of the other things. While we're talking about all the legislative portions, we have, and Erie Meyer can't be here today, tomorrow, but she's out. She's actually in court right now, suing, trying to keep the CFPB going. So where's the protections? Where's that happening? And so states, federal, we have this challenge, but there's no enforcement that's being talked about, and that's one of the major gaps I see. And then on the legislative side, also, there's a big disconnect on who is going to fund these efforts to figure these things out. And so what I fear is we'll have a lot of talk that's happening, but we will have, again, an unfunded mandate. And so we'll say all these things are on the book, but no action will actually take place.
Well, this is just, I think we, most of us are thinking about these disconnects, but you've so, clearly zoomed in and clearly articulated these differences and these time scales. And again, we here at Carnegie Mellon have a strong, probably one of the strongest programs at the intersection of deep tech and policy. And I think you really elevated that as we think about the age of AI. It's not just thinking about the acceleration that's enabled, managing the risks, but the important role of thinking about how we accelerate the policy evolution in a time of rapid change.
One way, let me just emphasize this, is here's how I think one of the ways we can solve this. And here's where CMU I think has a unique special opportunity. Fundamentally, all the things around governance right now are talk. And what I think we need to do is show people actually how to do it. We need to actually lay down the tracks and say, this is how we can do it. And we need partners in industry to do that. And we need to start walking the talk. The more we do that, I think the better off we'll be able to say, this is what it could look like. And there's a version of this. Hillary Mason, Mike Lukides, and I wrote a small book on AI and data and ethics. And largely because we were looking at everything that was taking place, and we said, we don't know how to implement any of this stuff into a company. And so we wrote down our own ways that we tried to implement this, and we tried to live this in our own lives. And it's not to say like we're saying, hey, academia bad or anything like that. We're trying to say, look, this is a practical approach, while academia gives us new solutions that then we can take and put into practice. But I think the ample one is for us to kind of look back and say, you know what? We figured out how to do this. We implemented this here. Look at the incredible positive results because of this. And that was my job at LinkedIn, was to say, and with Reid Hoffman, I really spent a lot of time on this, on privacy, security, all these aspects. And we said, look, we just got to walk the talk. We have to live it. We have to show it. And then we have to tell other people how we did it. And then allow other people just to say cut and paste.
I love that. That is so Carnegie Mellon, right? Just, we say, don't leave the implementation to others. I was actually talking...
Well, it's not a surprise that it comes from Carnegie Mellon, because a bunch of our team was from Carnegie Mellon.
Okay,
so
all right.
This is Monica Ragati and other people who are CMU grads who, by no surprise, were driving a lot of this.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. He's at NRO. And he's a roboticist, and he said, in the day, Red Whitaker, he's just a legend in the field because he would just go and do it. He was talking about doing a demo where he had a tethered robot somewhere, up in Greenland or something, doing a demonstration. And it's truly in our DNA. So I think, again, for those of us working in the policy domain, it's a really great suggestion.
Sorry to stay on this. I just want to emphasize the number of times where people talk about AI in policy but don't actually use AI is shockingly high. I will just share this quick story. So I was in a classified setting, and we were all talking about AI, and everyone was going around and around and around. And I was like, this is enough with this. So I just went off base, and I put in a whole bunch of things, speeches, other type things into an AI system. I said, hey, how is adversaries going to look at this? How is some sort of just average prompts, and sort of said, okay, give me a breakdown of these things. And then it took me longer to find a printer, and then print it out, bring it back into the classified room, and I just handed it out. And they said, how about this? And everyone's like, whoa, that's really helpful. That's not perfect, but that's pretty good. I was like, great. So I just gave you an army of 100 interns, 1,000 interns. But people had not actually, while we were sitting around the table discussing this, nobody actually had tactical feel of it. It's like trying to describe mobile governance without actually ever using a mobile phone. That just does, or the internet, that doesn't make sense. And so one of the things that I think is that we are missing also is really being immersed in the technology and understanding where it works, where it doesn't, where it hurts. And I'll say this as a parent of a CMU student who uses my login to access some of the more advanced AI stuff. I'm learning more from him about how he's using it and going, I'm like, oh, I didn't know it could do that. And so even somebody who's spending a lot of time on this, I'm being pushed. And so one of the things I think we have to ask ourselves is, how do we also help those that don't have access to all of this technology or familiarity with it up level so that we're all immersed equally in this and playing with the same and having a similar, we're all having the conversation from similar dialogues.
Fantastic points. Again, hopefully we won't see a divergence. You pointed to one of the top priorities in your role as chief scientist is really thinking about the population at large, and with the advances in AI and just the requirements. Again, hopefully we won't see. Yeah.
Sorry,
a separation.
I have another thought. So here's another thing, just advice for people who haven't seen this. If you expect good thinking to come from government people, good luck. It's not because they're not good thinkers. It's because they're tired. Like your job, like those jobs suck. Like your morning starts off with like 2 crises and you have to like figure out every day, how do you not let the urgent get in the way of the important? So our job is to really give them things that are shovel ready that they can take forward and run with. Like if we're expecting them just to come up with all the magic, that's not going to be possible because there's not enough bandwidth for the teams to handle all the complexity that's out there. So this is going to come down to us to describe and figure out and give it to them.
So many of us are working on a few shovel-ready projects right now, so hopefully that will go well. This is a really big question. If you were to redesign AI regulation from scratch, what guiding principles would you use?
So the first that I would go to, and this is something I ran out of time in the administration to accomplish, actually, that's how I got to know Farnham, actually, was on this front, was my goal was to have a commitment from every major university to commit to teaching ethics in AI, teaching ethics and security integrated into the curriculum, not as just add-on classes, integrated into every single thing. Because now I just need a time machine. But and I know CMU is already doing this, but the part that I think that is, if we think about what's the population that's going to build these technology, they haven't started college yet. The real volume, the bulk is still coming. So we still have time to get ahead of this. And then if we get them to understand that, and we have this tangible understanding of the ethical challenges, the issues, we have a common language. That's not just some add-on class, but it's integrated into every assignment. Like I'm still stunned that, like how many times there's a problem assignment to build a database, but there's never like the auto test suite against that database doesn't do, injection attacks or other type things. That needs to be, that's like core. It's part of the integrated suite. So I think it starts with that. 2 is the other portion I think that we need to really do with this is really be asking the different, like we need to make this a conversation with a broad base of people. Like one of the most important things that I also found is that you have to be working on teams that come from all different walks of life. And I know there's a lot of conversation, a lot of challenges around words like DEI and other things, but I think the better way to think about this is we have to make sure this technology works for all of us. That technology has to work for us, not against us. And these are very easy things to say. They're very hard things to do. And the only way to do it is bring them together in people. The third one I would say is we have to, and this is one of the ones that it sort of is framed as like, how much brakes, how much gas do we go? And the version that I think which we should ask is on data itself, because at the fundamentals of if you steer this with data is what do we want true north to really look like on this front? And what do we think that's going to be? And if I could go even further back in time and ask, like, what could we redo? I think it would be asking, how do we build our regulatory process to be one that is much more agile, where there's requirements for legislation to be updated in a regular, more frequent basis, rather than touch it, call it done, and then move forward.
Yeah, possibly later today, we have Max Katz, who has been a leader in, again, the AI for Science on behalf of the Senate. And we've had conversations with many VPRs around the country about the importance of as we're continuing to collect and harness vast amounts of data, that we do put frameworks in place so that we have some consistent formats, frameworks, and that it's truly AI ready.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like one thing that we learned from healthcare is, and I think we're still paying for this, is the regulatory burden is a real issue. And we don't see it at like big institutions, but we see it at mom and pop places. And so the cost of structure of these things can really hurt. And I got to see this when Andy Slavitt, who's head of CMS, myself, we were talking to physicians groups, and then we led to this area of consolidation for many reasons, not just on this front. But that is something that I think we always have to ask ourselves, what's the cost of this? And what are we holding back? And that can be also good. Some places we do need intentional friction in the place for those things, but we should be very thoughtful about that. And that really, one of the key things about that is who's at the table. A lot of times we used to say like there's only these certain types of people. There might be only lawyers at the table or policy people at the table, and you need to integrate that with technologists, scientists, educators, the whole group. You have to make that table bigger.
So before we go to questions from the audience, and again, please, for everybody, you can submit your questions by Slido. The code is provided up on the monitors. But we have many students in the audience, and you've, again, had a really tremendous career touching private, public sector, venture. What's some advice you'd like to share with the students?
Yeah, well, as a student who couldn't get into really any colleges and went to community college first, let me start with like what is the most important thing that you can do is learn how to learn. And, the students here, especially from CMU, you are all incredibly fortunate because the curriculum here is designed to teach you how to learn. There's a couple things that I think I would emphasize more than anything else is not just your technical curriculum, it's your non-technical curriculum. The greatest impact that I had was learning about groups, populations, ideas that I had no idea what I was getting involved in. Theater, psychology, economics, things in the liberal arts. Take as much liberal arts as you can. In those early days of LinkedIn, we had a lot of questions about people were, hedge funds were asking, we'd like to buy your data set. Reid Hoffman, the founder, Reid was very focused. He was actually, he's a philosophist. If he wasn't doing LinkedIn, he would have been completing his doctorate in philosophy. And I had a lot of, I studied a lot of Karl Popper and a lot of philosophy as a student, luckily. And so we had a common language to talk about these things and navigate the complexity of these areas. I think taking things where you are forced to interact with populations, like I got to really understand the Chicano population well because I took a theater class on gay Chicano theater, which I was like, well, I don't have any friends that are gay or Chicano, and I don't know theater, so checkbox, I'm going to take that class. And I walked into something I had no concept of. And then fast forward, I'd learned about Cesar Chavez and all these things. Fast forward, many years later in the White House, I'm working with Cesar Chavez's and Maria Huerta's granddaughter, and we're working on policies around healthcare on the border. And so I wouldn't have understood or had an appreciation for those issues without those aspects. And so that would be core number one. Core number two is assume that your job and everything that you know is going to be replaced. Assume everything is going to be replaced. And go into life with that degree of paranoia. Paranoia is good. I'd say that as a person who spends time working on startups, where we start to say a startup, you start dead and your job is to get to life. Like that's what we say. You start in the grave and your job is to figure out how to get to life. And so approach this with that paranoia. And as Farnham said, like your half-life, it's like the half-life of these things is going down. But the best opportunity is if you learn how to learn, and you are able to iterate at this and learn faster than others and be able to be this, you're forever in need. And so don't be afraid to say what you are today versus what you're going to be tomorrow is radically different. It's okay to reinvent yourself. It's okay to get uncomfortable, but develop those skills where you go to a conference, you go to a meeting, you go to different meetups where you don't know anybody. You are totally unfamiliar with anything. Walk in, keep going, and then you look back and you be like, wow, I'm actually one of the people that drove this. That's okay. Jump into different areas, jump into different things. It's okay to fail, get back up. No one remember, like people forget, like I've had colossal failures, and it's, you get to rewrite your own path.
So your son is a first year in mechanical engineering. My twins are second years in electrical and computer engineering, and I'll just share a quick story. One, in his freshman dorm, he was the very introverted, STEM kid, and he was on a floor with all arts and drama majors. It was a great life experience for him.
Fantastic. And you don't always see how beneficial these things are until much later. I am so thankful and so grateful that I sort of took weird things by everyone else's definition, and I have deep regrets still that I didn't take it. So sorry, believe it. One more thing: learn the languages that people use. What are those languages? So in technology, we know those technical languages. Like we know how to talk to each other about architecture, ideas, systems, those things. There are other languages. There is a language of economics. There's a language of law. There's a language of policy. There's lots of different forms of it. You need to become fluent in all of these. And if you're not fluent, you at least should be aware of them and how to talk to people with them and how to communicate with them. And one of the greatest issues we've had with technologists, and particularly I point a finger at myself in Silicon Valley, is we have not done a good job of speaking the languages of others.
I would say that universities are suffering from that problem right now, with our public opinion poll being certainly, I think it's an all-time low in my career in higher education, and you might have some guidance. But before we continue on that subject, I was
just about to comment on that.
Well, if I'm using my technology correctly, we have not received any questions, which is highly unusual. Oh, they're there. Where are they? Let's see. How do I, update. Oh gosh, how do I do that? Oh no, see, I shouldn't use this technology.
Oh, all right.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I was waiting for these questions to pour in. You want to say a couple of words?
I'm incredibly concerned that we have a delta of how the country views and values higher education on a number of fronts. And one of the things that I think we've taken the position that society should just value us. Just because we've been here, we've been riding on our momentum. I think those days we've been riding on borrowed time, and I'm very much a proponent of we have to go on the offense to help people understand this. And I primarily have done my time as faculty at a state school where we're constantly up against the fight of the legislature and other aspects. And our talking points are what I would call tired talking points. They're tired talking points. They're the same ones over and over again. And we have to find new models, new ideas how to do this. And we have to meet people where they are. We really have to meet people where they are. I think some of this is whether it's social media, it's other mechanisms. I'm not sure. But we need to really engage the public in novel ways to help people see why they should be so excited. And that previous era of somebody who I'm an incredible fan of, the Carl Sagans and others, that version is not working. It's not working with people. And we have to try different approaches. People don't want to just read journal articles. People don't value that. We haven't connected the dots for what they get out of it. But if you talk to people about if they want tailored genomic treatments, if people want these, they want to live in the world. People see these AI systems, they think everything is being done by the companies. They don't realize that the fundamental research happened here. And so we have to help people understand why this is a really good long-term investment. And we need to get the public on our side, have them to advocate for us with legislative and other leaders out there.
Yeah. Public and industry.
Okay,
Okay, everybody has helped me. I now have
many we have redundancy.
electronic gadgets. So, and we'll get to a few questions in the audience. Okay, with people like Musk becoming part of government, what do you foresee in terms of AI advancements? Are there areas you recognize that can benefit from such?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, the first thing I think is emphasize, there's, the way I think of it is government efficiency good? Yes. Who doesn't want government efficiency? Like that is absolutely the case. Most civil servants I talk to and I've worked with all want efficiency. Everyone is trying to make the job easier. If you ask a government person, like, why can't I use a collaborative software suite, pick your favorite one, we've all said yes. Like, why can't we make work easier? Absolutely. The thing that I think is there is that it has been a big challenge is an appreciation for what the jobs that people do are and how important it is. And that's what you've seen with people being fired and then people being brought. And I think fundamentally, we have to ask ourselves, how do we do this while really asking how do we ensure that there's dignity of people? This should not, any approach of efficiency, any approach of transitioning government or anything needs to be done with dignity. And we need to do it with an absolute zero tolerance for cruelty. That's number one. Number two is how do we think about AI? So right now, I would say the Biden-Harris administration was viewed as more brakes than gas. And there's debates, you can debate about that, but this is at least the perception, is that people in the industry was viewing it as brakes. This administration is all gas, no brakes at all right now. And I say this also, I've been working a lot on national security with how we should think about AI, a lot of questions there. And one of the things that I think is being missed is where does the technology actually work and where doesn't it work? And so there's a lot of use of just AI will solve this. And you're like, well, not really. Like it's still really bad at a lot of things. And this is regardless of the hallucinations or other things. And so this is the part that I think that that is missing is a nuance of where is this going to work and where isn't. And by the way, the best technologists can't tell you where this is actually going to work and where isn't it going to work. We're going to have to learn where it works and do that. And so the idea of sandboxes, other areas, I think is really the way to go forward on this, rather than just sort of carte blanche, AI everything. It's not going to work for everything, at least in the next several years, but possibly longer term, maybe. But we should figure out how to transition that well.
Okay. This is another really big question. What are your thoughts on AI as regards to intellectual property rights? And what is the role of government in regulating?
So property rights, the big one I think that we should just call out that's on the table is what happens with fair use. And I would not be surprised if this administration pushes for changes in how to think about fair use with AI. Why? Because if you are taking a position of all gas and go, and you position this as a national fight, for lack of a better term, that I can think of between countries, and you want to go, then you're going to take all safeguards off, and one of those is fair use. I think the question is how do we want to think about that, and what does that look like? I don't have a specific perspective on how to think about this. What I am trying to do, and this is an area where I would say it shows my own limits, is I'm trying to spend as much time as I can with great people who think about fair use and are helping me understand the nuances of what works, what doesn't, and the challenges that are there. I would also say, here's one way to think about this, is ask ourselves, no one in this room is AI fluent. AI fluent, unless there's a freshman here. Any freshman here, you're probably going to be AI fluent. I'm not even, like, we're like, we're AI adjacent. We're still learning with these technologies. We're playing with these things. The society is going to enter an AI fluent world in a period of time, just like we're mobile fluent now, effectively, as a society. We don't ask, like, what's the web version on the desktop? What's the mobile version? We don't ask that anymore. We just ask, like, well, I just want to solve this problem. We've kind of moved to that era. The question is, what type of society do we want to live in, and how do we transition that? And the question that's there is, are we going to have a soft landing of society or a hard landing of society? And what can we do to get to the softest landing possible for society? And that, I think, includes these kind of questions about fair use, property rights, all of that. And I think we have to ask that more holistically rather than to today's problems, but the broader set of questions of where this tech is going to go.
All right, I think we have time for one more question, and there's so many more here.
Well, hopefully we can.
Messed up a little bit
these
here.
questions, like, hopefully we'll just take all the questions from this event all together.
Yes.
And that shapes the key things that we need to be talking about, working on. So I'm glad people are putting all these in there.
Yeah, so final question. Please share your thoughts on the role of academia in enabling AI governance, research, and policies.
Mm-hmm. So the number one thing I think about for academia on governance is I would love to see tighter integration with industry. And the reason why I see that, I'm less interested in government, honestly, because if government's moving at 0.1x and industry is moving at potentially 10x, academia is setting that foundation for setting the table for the future. And so I think what we should be really engaging is with our industrial colleagues to say, what does that look like together? And there's a lot of things that have to be really rethought about. And I really suffered from this at LinkedIn, was I would I'd have academics who would reach out to me all the time to say, how can we have access to LinkedIn's data and all of these things? And I was really struggling because I would go to the team and say, we should open up this data set. And then the CFO and a general counsel would say, how do we know we're not going to get sued? And I'd be like, wow, well, I can't guarantee that. And they said, well, if we get sued, you're going to derail a bunch of projects, a bunch of ideas. And so now I'm getting handcuffed because we haven't figured out a way to actually enable this together. What is the right way to fund this? Because I'd come back, and say, hey, it's going to cost this. And I'd say, I can't afford that. How do we make that collaboration actually work? Where's that? How do we pull students into our environments? Do we bring our researchers and put them here in university? Do we hybridize this? I know there's a lot of versions of that are taking place here at CMU, which I think are fantastic. I would ask, how do we even 10x that more? And the reason that this is so powerful is, what is every student doing during the summer? They're almost all interning at companies. And so students and the talent base that is created in academia is the neck that turns the head of the company. They are the hands on the keys. What they implement, what they put into place is what is going to be the direction of the company. They are the future innovators. Every company is scared and terrified that the students that from CMU aren't going to want to come to them. They're going to go to somewhere else, or they're going to go start a competitor and destroy them. That is the inherent reality. And so we have in academia unbelievable power that we have yet to harness in this collaborative approach. And I think if we bring it together on that front, we're going to have a new way of actually approaching this.
We are having that conversation every day here. If you think about where we've been, we've gone from these very stovepiped, we work with industry and we work with government, but it's all very stovepiped, and it's very clear that in the next 3 to 5 years, it's about bringing the multi-sector stakeholders together, and where better to do that than at a university like Carnegie Mellon.
So let me just say, the reason, what people ask me all the time, why is a data science major taken off at a lot of institutions? It's because it's the one horizontal major. Like if you're working in archaeology and you want to use technology, a lot of times the CS department's like, what? And the archaeology department's like, who? And so the data science one kind of comes across. The more we can break down these silos, the better off we are. Because you know what? The future doesn't care about the silos. The students care about the skills that are a la carte choosing to actually shape the skill sets that they need. And we need to meet them where they are. They're the ones, if we listen to what the students want to do and where they're driving, that tells us what we actually got to be. And that flexibility is the one that society is going to really, I think, need from us and the direction that we can provide.
So I think you've given many closing thoughts, but it's now flashing red. So any last parting thoughts or words of wisdom for our students?
Yeah, the biggest one is, I would say, decisions are made by those that show up. Decisions are made by those that show up. You show up to events like this. Do not be a backbencher. Do not sit on the sidelines. You have a chance to serve, jump in. Doesn't matter your administration. Doesn't matter the viewpoints. Jump in. You get to control. You get to do things. You get to try things. And when you're building something, be the voice in the room. You do not have to be silent. Use your voice, speak up, and then get to know people and speak up for them that may not have a voice. And we do that, I think we'll put it on the right path.
Excellent. Thank you, DJ, for an amazing...
Thank you.
And I have to thank Gina for always bailing me out. She helped me at another one, too, I have to say. And I think we're now going to a break.
We're going to break?
All right. So more time for the backbenchers to come forth and ask DJ more questions.